those of us, 6 or 7 of us or 8 of us that really got into the recording part of it last week, plus the adventure up to Bell Cow to find the limits of the site, we accomplished quite a bit. And I think that it was we have some work to do on it. I think that we had some problem. Maybe I should get into this after we show you some slides of what's going on, although everyone that's here tonight was there, so I feel like I don't have to show you slides of it, but I guess people watching the video would appreciate knowing what we're talking about. But when we were recording, I think a couple of our biggest problems were that those of us who were measuring the designs from our line level were removed up on a ledge. And those of us who were drawing down below couldn't necessarily really see what the people measuring were measuring. So there's a little bit of gap there for interpretation. There's a line that goes down like this and like that, and when you're measuring it, that can, and then the person drawing is counting on a verbal description as well as the actual measurements. So I don't know how we'd solve that. We can't really get everybody up on the ledge at the same time. One thing you could do would be to use a pair of binoculars to check things out. But I think that just having some people, some backup people, if they're willing to stick around with the team, and say, and compare, walk a couple steps, look closely at what the person measuring is talking about, and go back and look at what the person is drawing. So a monitor of what's going on helps.
Maybe make it a 3-man team rather than a 2-man like
yeah.
that.
Definitely. Speaking as someone who considers herself slightly intelligent, that was a traumatic experience. I felt so completely out of control. It was terrible.
It was terrible.
It was an exciting experience, but I felt so sorry for John. Because we just weren't reaching each other. He was reaching me, but I couldn't get it.
Well, what's nice is that I have so many pictures of this site, slides, poster-sized color prints, okay, that I can now take the scale drawings that you made and go back at home and look at them and see where major problems are. A photograph in itself is no way to record rock art. For instance, that particular panel, even looking at it face-to-face, you wouldn't see every design on there until you actually tried to draw it. Then you discover so much. Now, a photograph of it may have all the designs on there, but there's no way to focus your attention on them individually and make sure that you see them all. So a photograph by itself does not seem to record rock art too well. But I think the combination here, I will have to rely on photography to straighten out some of the errors we make in the field. There were points where we changed off. There was one point where we changed off and everything shifted down about 40 centimeters on the next panel. I can correct that easily, and looking at a photograph gives me the way to check that. So, there's different levels of precision with regard to recording rock art, but depending on what our goals are, and I think that one of the most important goals here is going to be to look at this incredible number of basket maker human forms and look for diversity, variation in the torso decorations, the detail on the hands and the heads of these figures, and we're going to easily get that from the level of precision that we're working on. Yes, we could be more precise. We could try. I've seen people detail each and every peck. Okay, we can't do that. But we will get the overall. And it will be a very impressive, much more impressive than a bunch of photographs of the site would be, when you have scale drawings that really detail everything and they're right on the page. So I don't even have a way of guesstimating now how many of these basket maker human forms there are at the site. All I can say is that panel that we recorded, if I look at a photograph of it or I walk up to it, I thought there were half a dozen on there. And when we were done recording that day, we had recorded 28. So when I look at these other panels where I already know there's about 50 on there, it makes me wonder what we're going to find when we get up to measuring. So it was a really good start to the field project, and thank you all for your sincerity in the way we attacked that poor panel.
I can't wait to try it again.
We're not going to stay until 7 o'clock tonight. Actually, I have to get out of here at about 6:30 myself. But I wanted to give sort of an overview of what the Field Archaeology Workshop has been in the past at NPC. Oh, my word, yeah, we should have already. Darn it. Darn. Control room?
Yeah.
Control room?
Yes.
Are you recording already, or?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't tell you that. I'd forgotten to tell you to start the recording.
Yeah, the recorder's going.
Oh, has it already been going?
Yeah.
Good. Well, hi, everybody.
Because I didn't know if you were ready to start or yet or not.
Well, I had just forgotten to tell you to start it, and, you know, I'm glad if all of that was on the tape. That's good. Okay, so my goal in this just one-time Tuesday night meeting is to create a tape that we can make a presentation just about what we've done in the past in Field Archaeology Workshop, how it's related to other archaeology programs that we have here. Really, we've done a variety of different projects. I think that basically we're trying to do 3 different things at the same time. Certainly, it's meant to be an educational experience, a class in archaeology. But at the same time, it's meant to be sort of an adventure, okay? So it makes it fun, and that's why people take it over and over again. You know, it makes it more interesting. I'm glad that the prospect of even returning to the same site twice still contains some adventure for you. So that's good, because it's such an incredible site that we're working on right now. And thirdly, we're trying to make a contribution of some sort to the preservation of archaeological sites and to archaeological research. So I guess those would be the three different things that we're trying to do here. There's a number of other archaeology courses that I've taught at NPC over the course of the past 5 years, and they sort of dovetail with this one pretty well. Usually people take them in combination, or they take those and then end up in this one, or vice versa. Actually, it goes vice versa quite a bit. This course sometimes sparks enough interest for people to want to really get in. I suppose what it does is it's so hard to absorb enough information in the field, especially if you're, say, working on a survey with us or something, and you know, we try to at least familiarize people with basic description of artifacts and ceramics and things. Well, that led to a level of frustration over the years with pottery that people just wanted so badly to have a whole course on pottery that we finally did that. So the other courses that we have, Southwest Prehistory is probably the one that this course dovetails with the best, because we go out in the field and we look at Southwest prehistory as it is on the ground. And I'd have to say that we are in an ideal location for a Southwest prehistory course. Better than if we were in Phoenix, or in the heart of the whole Comm country. Better than if we were right next door to Chaco Canyon, I think. Because where we're at, we're in the middle. You know, we can take a 3-hour drive and visit important sites from all 3 of the major, or 4 if you include Sonoma, the major culture areas in the Southwest. You know, we're right on the boundary here, the marginal area between Mogollon culture of the mountains and the Anasazi culture of the plateau. And likewise, it's only 3 hours down into the deserts with the Holcomb culture. So you could, even in a one-day, it would be a long field trip to go down to Phoenix and back on, to look at Casa Grande or Pueblo Grande or Casas um, uh, Las Colinas or La Ciudad or something like that. But and likewise, it would be impossible to go to Chaco Canyon in one day and come back, and see anything. But as far as, being centrally located and being able to reach these places, let's say for an overnight field trip, we've got a lot of doors open to us. If this was a community college in Maricopa County, I wouldn't even try Chaco Canyon as an overnight. You'd be talking about a 6-hour, 7-hour, 8-hour, I guess, more like drive just to get there. So I just think that we're in a really ideal location to use this course as a basis for just taking trips, fun trips, educational tours, say, to sites throughout the Southwest and to see what's going on in terms of archaeology in the Southwest. But we're also in an ideal location for the other goal here, for contributing something in the way of archaeological research and preservation in a rural area where there's been so much pot hunting in the past, and where we have a new site steward program with volunteers to protect sites that we can work hand in hand with, where we have there's not too many archaeologists around here to keep an eye on things, so to speak. There's a lot of a lot of things that need to be done. If there was a site being destroyed in Phoenix, they could come up with volunteers from the university to take care of things, to do some sort of salvage operation through the Southwestern Archaeological Team or something like this. But I don't know. I found over the years that we have played a very useful role in recording sites for surveys of areas, sites that may have otherwise been destroyed, for notifying the state when sites are being impacted by construction or by vandalism, for doing salvage documentation of sites that are being destroyed and there's nothing we can do about it, for nominating sites to the Arizona Site Steward Program, because we have a intimate sense here, now that we're very familiar, we have a network of individuals across the county, and we call each other up. NPC's been very helpful for developing this network. I mean, I was able to stay with NPC even though I moved from Shodo to Winslow, and meet a whole bunch of other people interested in this, and develop more friendships and really more people to get involved in it. And now it just seems like, through having this video network type course and teleconference network and the shuttle system, and you saw this in the last couple field trips, it really helps for developing something like the Site Steward Program, or developing a sort of a group of concerned citizens that all let each other know what's going on. But in terms of in terms of the research that takes place, then more like in our own backyard, rather than looking at the long distance educational tours, we're again in an ideal area, because this has been the center of the White Mountains, east central Arizona areas had so much in the way of archaeological research in the past century or so. Starting with Jesse Walter Fuchs coming through here, doing some excavations at Pinedale Ruin, at Fourmile Ruin, and outside of Snowflake, at Homology Ruins in Winslow, and passing through the whole area with Cushing and his work over at Zuni. Some of the classic early anthropologists of the Southwest worked right here, and from there, it's just a very interesting story, the history of archaeology as seen from, say, Sholo, Arizona, because so much has taken place right here. Forestdale Valley, 8 miles down the road, the work of Emil Howry there in the early 30s was crucial to establishing the Mogollon as a separate culture area from the Anasazi. They had this elaborate Pecos classification that they tried to make fit across the whole Southwest, and it became clear that that everything did not fit in with it. So Howard came deliberately to Forestdale to test the idea that there's a separate culture area. He reasoned it by excavating in the mountains, but very close to the plateau. If the culture pattern was markedly different, then that they could actually call it a separate culture rather than just a continuum of different traits. So this was a very important excavation in Forestdale. Likewise, the National Geographic Beam expedition that discovered the piece of wood down here in Sholo Creek, in Sholo Ruin, that established the chronology upon which we can now precisely date ruins all over the plateau. It's very important in the history of archaeology. All of the work by the Field Museum of Natural History and the University of Arizona in the Hay Hollow Valley area, the Vernon area, the Concho area, it has been pertinent to a number of issues in anthropology, including the discovery of some Paleo-Indian sites, some early sites, but also, with regard to the development of theory in archaeology, with the work by Longacre and Hill and others, looking at ceramics as they may reflect social organization. Some of the controversies that centered on that. Fred Plog and Martin worked together on some of these projects and produced a book, The Archaeology of Arizona. And if there's one area they were familiar with in writing that book, it was right here. And so many of their statements about the changes in archaeology, so many of their case studies of what they were calling, modern techniques of survey and such, were based on this area, Hay Hollow Valley in particular. It's become the center of a lot of debates between the University of Arizona and the Arizona State University. We've already talked about some of those, I guess, if you're in basic archaeology class, about what kind of social organization was involved in some of these largest ruins in the Southwest, in this region here, that were occupied in the 14th century, like Chavez Pass with 1,200 rooms or so, and the Hammurabi sites, and Fourmile with 600 rooms. These are some of the largest ruins in the Southwest. Grasshopper Pueblo is only, 25, 30 miles down the road near Sibique. This has been the longest single archaeological field school in the United States, as far as I know. 27th year this year of excavating at Grasshopper Pueblo. Let's say the most thoroughly studied Pueblo in the Southwest is right down the road from us. And the Hammurabi Research Program is young by comparison, but is much more comprehensive, including study of a whole region there, really, with different sites involved. A lot going on there for the past 5 years, and will continue to go on. The Hammurabi I could use for a lot of examples, of course, but the establishment of Hammurabi in 1986 came after about 10 years of voiced public support in the Winslow area and across the state to establish an archaeological theme park in Arizona. We had the support for this state park that's right here within our district, our community college district, and it's only an hour and a half down the road, of the whole state, and it made some changes in the way archaeology is run in the state, because in order to get this through, they established the Hammurabi Task Force, which has now evolved into the Governor's Advisory Commission on Archaeology, and is now not directly related to Hammurabi per se, but we've played a role in the development of preservation concerns across the state then. So, I said most of the things that I wanted to say as showing you slides, but I came to thinking it was easier to do than running back and forth to press a button or or any of this. So why don't I show you some of the things, and the last part of it, we have some slides of the stats and of what we're going to try to do this semester. So let's see. I'll turn off the light. You turn on the slide projector, John. Do we have anyone else in St. John's yet?
Nobody yet.
Okay. And if the control room could sort of zero in, well, actually press the button and get a picture on there, and it'll be easier for them. And zero in so that picture is as large as possible. And could you close the door, John? Control room?
This tape you're making, is it a videotape or audio tape?
The tape that they're making is a videotape. Okay, a little too far probably. It's a slide. I could swear those people are moving. How can they do that? Yeah, a little bit left. I would say you still need to make it bigger because we need the front of the car. Okay, and then over, and that'll the other way. Rather have all of it, and yeah, that's good right there. Okay, well, I don't know how clearly this on our little monitor it looks pretty good. I'm just giving you some examples of some of the field trips and some of the field work that we've done in the past. And we used to make a tradition of going to Chaco Canyon every semester, and I like to try to take group photos, although usually everyone's wandering around, so in this one I only got about 5 people. But you may recognize here, this was taken like 4 years ago. You recognize anybody there, or can't you quite see? There's Vera, okay? So she's been on most of these places. Vera and Tom Kuka and forgotten Gene Ivy. Gene Ivy, yeah.
You want me to see if I can get the people up closer?
No, that's all right. We'll just move on to the next one. This was a camp out at Chaco Canyon, but Chaco Canyon as a field trip, you know, it's just way more than you can get into 2 days, but people never forget it. And you know, we usually get our tour of Pueblo Bonito and what's the one next to it? I can't. Chetraquetl. And then hike out to one of the sites that's up above the mesa, like Pueblo Alto or something. But it's a one of the field trips that's probably made our class fairly well known because people have such a good time on it. But we haven't done it in a while, and we're not going to be able to have time to do it this semester. Let's go on to the next one. We also have gone up to Canyon de Chelly and taken jeep tours and walked down to White House Ruin. This is White House Ruin. Last time I went to White House Ruin, it was right after we had recorded adobe brick architecture at Fourmile, and I spent the afternoon, as much as I wanted to go hiking, I had to spend the time in the archives because I had to find out, was there adobe brick architecture in these cliff dwellings or not? Because Cosmos Mindelith and Victor Mindelith had, I guess it was Victor Mindelith wrote those reports on the White House ruin, and described that there were adobe brick walls interlaced with stone masonry walls, but that this was proof of occupation during the historic period. And interestingly enough, there's now no documentation of those walls ever having existed other than his descriptions, his maps. So I wasn't able to sort it out, but go on to the next one. Yeah, kind of a lousy photo. See, as part of this slideshow is to sort of be a promotion for tours. See how much fun it is? Jeep tours in Canyon de Chelly. We had a blast. You get a comic on there for the tour, and they may or may not know a lot about the sites from an archaeological perspective, but they sure give you a lot of Navajo lore regarding them. So go on to the next one. These are just We've also visited ongoing archaeological research projects almost every semester, and this slide was taken when I guess it's called Oak Creek Ruin over at Zuni was being excavated. But we've visited ongoing projects and had tours from professional archaeologists running those projects at Homalavi, at Casa Malpais, at in the Zuni area, here in Sholo with the excavations that were going on with in relation to land exchanges, Grasshopper, of course. So there's usually every year there's a lot going on. The only problem has been that when we have this class during the summer, I usually take advantage of that. So we had a field archaeology workshop one summer, and we framed the entire course on current controversies in archaeology. We went to excavations where we could view these excavations as being potential solutions to some of the controversies. So we went to Homalavi to look at U of A's work there. We went to Chavez Pass and talked about ASU's interpretations there. We went to Grasshopper, and we got all the different perspectives, approaches from the archaeologists with regard to that. And we talked about Athapascan archaeology, and specifically went up to Canyon de Chelly and down to White River and talking about that. So we'd focus on things that were happening in archaeology. So let's go on to the next one. I'm not even sure. Just another one of Zuni here. Go on to another one. Casa Malpais, if you haven't seen it before, looking down on the beautiful village of Springerville. Actually, Springerville must be off to the left. But we're looking off the top of the cliff here, and I don't know how clear. Yeah, I think you can see this on your monitor. This is the Great Kiva, rectangular Great Kiva down here in the shade. It's kind of hard to see from this perspective, but it is difficult to pick out the architecture with this ugly basalt rock. There's some plaza areas and some walls. This is looking off the top. Let's go to the next one. I just thought I'd throw this in because I know you've all heard about the catacombs. We visited Casa Malpais a few times and had tours. And in fact, we used to go to Casa Malpais before all of this happened. And I used to make notes about, any fresh dirt where human burials were being disturbed from under these rocks. You could see bones and things. Because it was one of the sites that, as a site steward, I was in charge of watching. Never forget the day I got locked out there. They gave me the key for the gate. It was let me in and gave me the key. It was the wrong key, and I got locked out there. Had to walk back to town. But anyway, the catacombs that you've heard about are in this basalt. What it is a basalt flow that came from a volcano off to the left there, and has been falling off as the weight breaks and sinks down into the alluvial floodplain of Little Colorado. So you get these big fissures as they crack off like this. Basically fissures, in case you had the idea that they were, huge cave-type rooms. I don't believe so. I think they're all fissure-type things. Go on to the next one. Petrified Forest, of course. We've gone there on a number of field trips with a number of different themes. I just put in this one of the newspaper rock just to represent Petrified Forest. But sometimes on field trips through Petrified Forest, we're able to look at the whole chronology of from basket maker sites, starting with the Adamana site, and work our way up and get an overview in the course of one field trip of Southwest prehistory. And the rock art there, the sun daggers, they have some 19 prehistoric solstice marker petroglyphs within the Petrified Forest area. And so we've made some special field trips. Some of them we've had to leave at 4 in the morning to watch the sunrise on a rock to see, what all this halloo is about or whatever. And so there's certainly a lot that can be done with. There are a number of sites that are on our site steward program that we watch closely. Darlene's in charge of that area. She's got some sites near the Petrified Forest, rock art sites primarily, that we watch. So, some very large rock art sites. Go on to the next one. This is, oh, I didn't realize that my dog Aiko was in this picture. Oh, well, he was helping us on a clearance survey. I just put in this, I couldn't find one that showed us actually doing a clearance survey, but we did this survey for a petrified wood mineral lease north of St. John's in 1986. It was one of, well, I guess 4 clearance surveys we've now done as part of the project, as part of this class. In this case, what we focus on is walking over the landscape and looking, 10 meters apart, about 5 of us with a compass bearings to keep us online, and record every site we run into. This is usually, in this case, they wanted to haul petrified wood out of there, so they would be disturbing the sites. In other cases, any kind of development, road developments, pipelines, things like this that require archaeological clearance surveys. We may, we've also done some survey work just for research purposes, and I would very much like in the future to survey the private land around Sholo Ruin, the areas that are not within the National Forest boundaries, because this is sort of a gap in the knowledge that we do have from the sites on the forest. So the sites that are closely associated with the Sholo Ruin itself, such a large Pueblo, we may not really know what's going on in later time periods because we haven't surveyed the private lands. I'd like to do a research project on that in the future. But this one was really difficult because it was badlands. Try taking a compass, keeping on a compass line when there's 2 clay hills between you and the next person who's only 30 feet away. So it was crazy. But we did record a number of sites, and we did end up advising that they changed their lease parcel just slightly to protect one site. Go on to the next one. During these surveys, we run into a lot of artifacts on the ground. And in case I haven't already told everybody once, twice, or more, we leave everything there at the site, and preferably right where you found it for the most part, or roughly where you found it. But the artifacts that we see in a surface survey like this can tell us a lot about the site. And an example like this, these are some of the decorated sherds that were at the site of the petrified wood mineral lease parcel we worked on, and they gave us an idea of the timing of occupation there. There's a lot of Gallop style sherds here with the all hatch designs, and there's things like this reserve piece, snowflake style here. The fact that there's corrugated pottery all tell us that basically this site, this looks earlier and that looks earlier. But basically then the site, these may be Pueblo 1, but that one may be 2, but Pueblo 3, we see some polychromes and things. So we can tell a lot about the site just by looking at the artifacts, and especially at the ones that are, say, pretty, okay, that people are most tempted to carry away from the site. I've been on a lot of surveys where we were unable to tell very much about the site because of the degree of surface collecting that had gone on in the past. In fact, I hate to admit it, but there's a site out here near Sholo that we located during survey but couldn't find it again in order to do test excavations because we had flagged the sites, they had attracted attention, and someone literally went out there with a vacuum cleaner. I mean, not literally with a vacuum cleaner, but like a vacuum cleaner, okay, and had picked up just about everything. I mean, we knew we were in the area, but the surface remains were gone. So in walkover survey, we do sometimes spend the time to sit down and draw these designs, especially if we don't know right offhand what they're a little unusual. We may draw the design. And Actually, that works a whole lot better. You can draw about 20 sherds on one piece of paper, bring it back and research it, and have a real good record, it's easier to manage. For me, of course, easier to file away, with the report. So I wouldn't make surface good, so it works so much better to just do your artifact analysis in the field anyway, for me. So go on to the next slide. And here's a site with exactly the same artifacts. No, we've participated in some archaeological excavations that have been going on when they're nearby and when we're able to work out an arrangement with the agency doing the excavations. In '87, we worked with the Museum of Northern Arizona on excavations in the Sholo area. Altogether with MNA, we excavated about 28 sites, or did some excavations, some testing on about 28 sites within 2,500 acres in the land exchange area. But the main areas that we're hitting, over by Park Valley and up behind the college here, about a mile up the hill, over by, and we're really close. And since I was working with M&A at the time on a daily basis, really structured thing where people in this course could come out and participate. And we appreciated the help that we got on that. So this one, let's see if I can remember which site this is. No, I can't. Go on to the next one. This one's out near Park Valley, and this was one of the largest Pueblo structures as a single room that we did excavate that year. And you can't see all four walls, but you can see the two, and they're like 2 to 3 courses thick. There's a heavy structured building here. And in each corner you have little boxes. I wish they were showed a little easier, but there's one there that held main support posts as well. We found no doorway, and we believe it was a roof entry and probably some sort of specialized structure. It had no artifacts like trash, no fire pits, nothing indicating a domestic use, but it did have what looked like the impressions of the base of a ladder in the ground, below where we would suppose a roof entry may be. So, whether you want to call it a rectangular kiva or not, I don't know. It's not under the ground or anything, but it was an interesting structure. Go on to the next one. Whoop. Ate it. Museum of Northern Arizona is going to be starting some more excavations here in the next. Actually, it's not Museum of Northern Arizona, but some of the same people that were involved in that are going to be starting some excavations in the area, I hear. So, at some point later in the semester, we will check that out, see if we can have a field trip, a tour of what's going on. Yeah, this one shows the post support much better, and the other one with the upright slabs. Well, repeats. Wonder why that's happening. Have you tried that select switch on the top? See if it kicks the slide out. Yeah, just push it down. Doesn't do anything, huh? Should I turn on the light for you? That one came back. Aha. This is and try focusing that a little bit. And control room, we may be able to get a better effect if you focus in on this area. This is an aerial view. That looks good. of Fourmile ruin in Taylor. And go up a little. Yeah, you got it. Somewhere in between the two, down a little bit. That's good, right there. Well, why don't you widen it out some, because I want that area above. That was good a little while ago. It out a little more until my finger is seen. Okay, that'll do, right there. That's perfect. Okay, this is an aerial view of Fourmile ruin. We had, actually we were planning a trip down to Tano National Monument down near Roosevelt, because it was kind of, it was like November, it was getting cold, and we were going to go down that country and do an overnight, but the weather was so bad that we decided not to, and we all decided to go check out what some rumors we'd heard that Fourmile ruin, one of the largest sites in the area, was being excavated, and that there were backhoes on the property. So we just went and checked it out that day. And indeed, we found that some 80 or 100 rooms had already been dug out. People had purchased the ruin for the explicit purpose of mining it for artifacts. And it was a private site, and it was incredible, you know, what we saw there that day, with hundreds of adobe brick walls, with human remains everywhere, with pottery everywhere, apparently very high yields of artifacts for these art dealers. It was very, it was the most dramatic example of site destruction that I'd ever seen. And at the same time, the owners said they wanted to save the site, that they were doing this because otherwise it would be bulldozed. So I worked with them for a while. I tried to find someone they could donate the site to, and none of that worked out. We did, in the process, manage to save some information from the site. We did architectural, and it would have been just a lost hope to try to salvage any information from, in terms of room usage and artifacts on surfaces within the rooms, because there's just, you know, they were doing a room a day with a backhoe. There's no way we could even try to save information about that. But the walls were just left there exposed, and sometimes the architecture itself can tell you so much about a site that it seemed like the best thing to go after. And I did it for a while. I was mapping the rooms and then going to the people who were digging them, and one of the guys that was helping them was I was able to like interview him room by room and ask him what was found in that room. In the end, I found like that information wasn't very useful to us because it wasn't comparable. You know, some rooms he'd remember, some rooms he wouldn't, and it didn't add up to much. And so, but in any case, you know, the research that we started here has still gone on now. This is in '88 we did this, spring of '88, and then I went to work for Archaeology, and we made a discovery here at Fourmile ruin in the course of our field archaeology workshop that is quite important, really, for the interpretation of culture history on the plateau. This discovery of adobe brick architecture in the prehistoric period. And I guess many of you have heard me talk about it before. But it was so interesting that my job that I went on to over at Archaeology had run right into other examples of this, where it had never been described by anyone else. You know, so that the discovery, I mean, it had been described in some reports, but no one had tried to bring it together. You know, Chevron ruin in the '81, Mike Andrews had described a few brick walls and said, how curious, how is this? This isn't supposed to happen, you know. But having seen hundreds of adobe brick walls at Fourmile, I was hot on the pursuit of trying to figure out what was going on. So Chevron ruin, Archaeology 3, and then the discovery of a room block next to Archaeology 1 constructed entirely out of adobe bricks. And pretty soon, through archival research, I'd managed to locate 9 sites throughout the Southwest that were definitely prehistoric and definitely had adobe brick construction. Go on to the next one. Excellent aerial, though. You can see the, since you can't go on, I'll just show you. The equipment they were using, yes. You can see the ash in the soil, you know, the charcoal and everything, the amount of cultural deposits there. I don't know why this is doing it. Now here's a close-up of what was happening here. Basically coring the room block, primarily looking for graves beneath the floors. That was the main thing. But, you know, sometimes a room would be closed off, or whole pieces of pottery would actually fall from in the roof fall and break, and they were able to piece them back together. But they did this with a backhoe, and they'd go, you know, just one room to the next, and they left the walls standing. And this is what I walked up to that first day. What could we possibly do that would be of any value while this incredible site is being destroyed? I mean, these walls are now melted away. It would have been a much more dramatic site as a tourist attraction than, say, Casa Malpais is for Springerville. I think that if it happened now, maybe people would see the potential, you know, and this is only a few years ago, but I think things are changing that fast in public awareness of historic preservation that just didn't work then. But anyway, so what we were trying to do is clean up a few of these wall faces that were exposed, to do some architectural analysis. This is the room block C, or southeast room block, and this is not the extent of it. You can just see some of the rooms. Actually, out here they've already filled in. It went in and out, kind of like a modern condominium, you know, with these little what do you want to call them? Little cubby holes between the sets of rooms. So that you had these areas that were sheltered from the wind, where you could have activities and things. And, you know, we never got to do scientific excavations to see what they were doing in these areas, but and likewise, I'm sure a lot of activities on the roof, and then over here is the main plaza of the site. So it was interesting the way it was laid out, and that's one thing we had the opportunity to do, is to study the way it was laid out. Try the next slide. Here's an example of some of these incredible adobe brick walls that every time I show this slide to archaeologists, you know, they'll question you, oh, you don't mean adobe bricks, and they'd even, you mean like puddled adobe, and then it would get on, the conversation would go on, and I'd convince them that, yes, I mean bricks, and they'd say, oh, well, hand-molded, you know, hand-molded bricks I'll accept, but frame-molded bricks, tell you, I don't know. I could write a paper describing and trying to prove that frames were used to build bricks at Fourmile Ruin. But just this picture seems to do it. You know, these are not, the sharp here, the regular size of these bricks are incredible. You know what else was neat about this architectural analysis was that with adobe, it's an entirely additive process. It's not a subtractive process. When you build a stone wall, you know, you may break the rocks or straighten them out or cut them or whatever, and you take a form that's already provided and pile it up. But it's entirely a human creation, from the size and shape of the brick, the composition of the dirt, everything is a human creation. So there's so much more potential for variation. Okay? So, I mean, it's very interesting when you find one wall is built with, say, dark brown bricks with white mortar. The next wall is built with white bricks with brown mortar, gray bricks with red mortar, red bricks with gray mortar, to the point where you could, I mean, one thing that we try to do in architectural analysis is decide how a Pueblo grew over time, to see which units were built at once. You could almost do that standing back and looking at a room block at Homology and say, at Fourmile Ruin, and say, you know, that's a different construction because the paste was different that day, you know? That was a different wall entirely. And then we were able to confirm some of the ideas about construction sequence by looking at the variation in construction technology and style that I'm talking about, with doing bond and abutment analysis. Try the next slide. And that's what one of the students is doing here. You can see all the artifacts that the diggers just left there. I guess they decided that there was no grave under the floor in this room because they even left a pedestal here, but you know, patatis and pottery everywhere. We did not want to collect any artifacts, as much as maybe we could have gotten some information or a reference collection or something out of the incredible amount of artifacts lying around. I felt that it was best. The architectural analysis was the best way, first of all, to get a comprehensive view of the Pueblo, rather than focusing on one area and excavating it in detail or studying the artifacts, which may have been moved by the pot hunters or by previous pot hunters or whatever. But it was also a way of learning about the site and at the same time passing a message both to the landowners who were digging the site and to the students in the class that we're not here to collect. We're not here for artifacts. This may look like a treasure hunt, and it did look like a treasure hunt because that's what was going on. But that's not what we're here for. And so we would walk into the field with, graph paper, cameras, equipment for taking pictures, a trowel to clean up the walls, and we'd walk out with a stack of notes. I didn't want there to be any confusion about our motive. So he's cleaning up this corner here. You can see there's a little bit of dirt in each corner that covers where the walls go together. And try the next slide. Maybe this would be easier to explain. I think we have one in here. Hey, is that Laura?
Yeah, it's me.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. Sorry I couldn't get here sooner.
All right. Okay, this is, I guess, yeah, you can see it even on the monitor. This is a good example of the kind of information we collected to come up with a construction sequence for the room block. Not only are these two adobe walls built very differently, you can see this one is brown bricks with white mortar, and this one is brown bricks with brown mortar. I mean, you can see what I'm talking about here, right? From a distance, you'd know, once this is cleaned up, that you have a difference between these two walls. They're not built at the same time. Now, which wall do you think was built first? This one here, right? These bricks, you can see the mortar joints there, they're overlapping, and it continues right on through the wall, whereas this one, all the bricks end here, with a mortar joint against that wall. It's abutted onto that wall. So this wall was built after this wall. Now, another thing I would very much like to do, I still have about 100 pollen samples that I had taken from the brick paste and the mortar paste. Just small samples of dirt, which I would like to get a grant or something to have analyzed. I'd like to get them out of my house, too. But if we could do that, I think that perhaps we could show, for instance, something about the labor organization and the planning that went on in the adobe brick construction of the site. Because we could show, for instance, that if they took advantage of the summer rains to make a lot of bricks, to get a lot of people out there in the mud puddle and crank out some bricks and stockpile them to be used throughout the rest of the year. Then we could see, planned construction units by the differences in seasonality between the bricks and the mortar. Because if the mortar has, say, pollen in it that would have only been around in the fall or some other time of year, and you could show stockpiling of building materials that way. And since this is one part of, there's several things I think explain why we have adobe brick construction at some late prehistoric sites. One of them is when you don't have stone nearby to build with. But a relatively arid climate with a seasonal rainfall pattern makes building with bricks much more reasonable than building with puddled adobe, where you need water present, a lot of water present for the construction all the time. Stockpiling earth as a building material is about the only way to do it if you don't have a continuous stream. So try the next slide. A lot of interesting things still to come from our analysis at Fourmile, although we only looked at one room block. Each slide is doing this to John now, each and every one of them. but eventually he prevails. Thank you. So one thing we generated was a map of that room block. And you can see now what I was talking about with this arrangement with the little cubby holes between the rooms. What I haven't shown here is like where there's fire hearths in some rooms and not in others, and smoke stains on the walls, and those can help us a bit too. All of these outer rooms had fire hearths. They were habitation rooms. The solid lined walls are all stone masonry construction, and the dotted line walls are all adobe. Now what I found was that there was an initial core construction unit that went from here, well actually the first one, let's see if I get this right, the first one was here. These were all bonded together, and then there was an abutment here. These 5 rooms here were all bonded together. You can see it's interrupted by adobe, but I think that's where walls had fallen and were rebuilt with adobe. This gap is a problem for that, but since that's bonded, these 4 corners are bonded, and everything else here, these walls are abutted to these outer walls. I believe that it started as a linear arrangement of stone masonry rooms, and then it grew to here with stone masonry rooms, all bonded as another unit. I think it did that before any of these other rooms were added on. And then these adobe walls were butted off, and they tend to grow in 2 rooms at a time, just like these last rooms grew here. And who knows, if given another century, maybe these would have filled in. So,
Doug,
yes?
have you determined whether the bricks were made from the dirt that was dug out for these houses, or whether it's from another area?
Well, actually, these are all above ground. But another discovery that we made was it had been believed since Fuchs, 100 years ago, that Fourmile Ruin was also an early pit house village. There, nearby, out here to the southeast, there's a large number of circular depressions in the ground. What puzzled me in walking over the site before it was dug at all like this was that there was no early pottery that I could see. I didn't see any early Pueblo pottery or basket maker pottery styles. With a pit house village like that, I expect to see the Kanaa style or something with the triangles with the little ticks on it and the zigzag lines and stuff. Just something representing a pit house village. And it wasn't there. Well, I took soil samples from the bricks and I compared them with dirt from some of these depressions. And they came out so identical that they could have been 2 shovels out of the same hole. So I believe these were burrow pits. And this also was confirmed when the pot hunters, the people digging the site, tried to dig up the pit house village, and didn't find much. So I believe those were all burrow pits, and they were just close by, right over here. It was a virtual moonscape of craters.
Are any of those craters still intact?
I believe so. I don't think they've bladed the whole top of the hill there. I got some dirt samples, thankfully, to compare there. So I've got a pretty good case for that. Now, some archaeologists said NAU have been working along the same lines, but for some reason, they are more interested in the pottery. They focus more on the pottery than the architecture at the site, and hence they have looked at these burrow pits more as clay sources for making pottery than for building walls. That kind of intrigues me a little bit because, here we've got hundreds of adobe walls, and it's kind of obvious where most of the material went to. I'm not saying that some of the clay wasn't used for pottery making, but the explanation for the hole is the wall. So, go on to the next slide. Try to, I should say. Okay. Another site nearby at the same time was being destroyed. This is Shumway Ruin, and I like to use this slide as an example of another way that we can make a difference when we're out there in the field going on these. Every time we visit a site on private land, like for instance Brantley Baird the other day, we make an impression upon it. We make an impression that what the archaeological remains on his land are important. Not that they're say valuable. He couldn't, of course, sell the rock art anyway, but that they're of value, and that they're interesting. We communicate an interest. And usually a landowner is proud of that. Usually a landowner likes the idea that they have an important historical resource on their property. I've run into, there's a pit house village in Snowflake, one man owned. He said that he'd been contacting the State Museum for years saying, please come up and check this out. You can build a museum on it if you want to. And the fact that they were never able to come up and do that, and of course there's so many sites they can't, they don't have funding to do that kind of thing, communicated to him that his site was not important. And it's a really neat early basket maker pit house village. And we went out there because we were doing a survey of land nearby for the construction of an irrigation canal, and checked out the top of the hill there because he was interested in what we were doing and wanted to show us the site. And he had just used a backhoe on a portion of it, but I haven't been up there since. But I'd like to think he gave me that he wasn't going to destroy it anymore if it was indeed of significance. But he was kind of like, well, it seems like no one cares about it. I guess I'll just dig it up and see what's there, So we were able to provide him some information about the site, and he wouldn't find anything in there that he could sell anyway, an early basket maker site like that, probably not. Not pretty painted pottery or anything. But this is an example. You have a fence. See the fence on the top of this wall? 2 landowners. This landowner allowed a local person to come in with a huge machine and plow down a multi-story room block. Probably 100 rooms or so, just plowed off the hill. And I have some other pictures of skeletal material and things. There were obviously some graves in there, and yet he didn't find much because he just plowed it off the hill and waited to see what rolled out. So he destroyed even the things he could sell, leave alone all the information. And then he started on the other side of this fence also, started working over there with the permission owner. But that landowner came to one of our Archaeology Society meetings, met those of us who were in the field archaeology workshop, signed up for the class, went on some field trips, came to classes and things, joined the Archaeological Society, and stopped the pot hunting on his land. He and I guess it's a big family that owns the site, and I guess he was the patriarch of the family, the father, able to say, no more of this. We're not going to let him destroy the site on our land. So, that's an example of, for instance, what a little bit of public awareness, the fact that we're out there communicating a concern to preserve the past can have. I think it's much more effective on a neighborly kind of hearing about it on Channel A or something. So, next slide, please. We've also recorded rock art, some rock art recording during past sessions. We even, a couple of semesters, called the class Rock Art Recording Workshop. Basically the same class. We're continuing to record rock art now. But we'll wait and see. Actually, in the future, I'd like to develop it as a separate course. A little bit of everything now. And, rock art is really interesting stuff in that, interpret that for me. What's this mean, it evokes feelings about, that connect you with a time. There's no way to say translate it or anything, but one of the neatest things about rock art is that it's in place. It's right where it was when it was made. So sometimes just the mere location of it can tell you a lot about the past. Go on to the next one. One of the specific projects that we've done is recording flute players. One that's up here. You can see that in the monitor, maybe not. The Cocoa project. We did 2 sessions, recorded 30-something flute players in the Colorado Valley. This was next slide. Where Chevelon, and this is an aerial view looking down Chevelon Canyon. Well, I think what we have is that it's, sorry, because this is the road that you go in. I think the steps is right up in here. I wonder what's in them side canyons, John. But it gives you an interesting perspective, you know, what a separate and what different resources. I mean, we saw all sorts of, from the kids gathering crawdads today to finding rose hips, and there's wild grapes, and, you know, amidst an environment, you know, that generally speaking is arid grassland. Go on to the next slide. Chevelon Ruin is located only by the site as the eagle flies or crow, but this is an aerial view of it. I don't know how well up here, but the main room block mound up here, several hundred rooms, multi-story, with these single-story coming back here around a main plaza area. Large Pueblo site. You can barely see the slide. Or you may have a, I think you can probably make that out. You see that, Laura?
Yeah,
Sort of, huh?
I mean, you know, it's pretty vague.
Okay. Go on. Hey, no. Okay. This is the panel that started, actually, that we finished this. Okay. Look familiar, I guess, huh? I think the biggest or most doesn't have, it's not the panel with the most rock art on it at the site, but I like this panel because it's a example of patination. You know, that you can use patination for dating.